Um, I guess first and foremost, happy Pride, everyone. Woo, yay. I was gonna do like a little like applause button, but I thought that would be a little too cheesy. Um, but I know we definitely have some new faces here. So I want to briefly introduce our event hosts, the Help Network. The Help Network was born from a desire for its founders to help their friends. In post production services for over 15 years, the Help Network's founders, Chip and Julia, have helped hundreds of clients and employed even more talented creatives on award winning projects. Using these connections, vetted talent, and vendors from around the world, they bring a trusted network of creative entertainment industry professionals to all of their projects. The Help Network does host several of these informative events, just like this one. So please be sure to check out their website as well, or their YouTube if you missed any other events too. So if you missed the first part of this little spiel, it'll be right up on YouTube for you pretty soon. All right. Um, let's see here. So let's just dive into our introductions. Speakers, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and briefly explaining how you like to celebrate Pride. I'll go first. I'm Keevon Sanders. I am moderating today's event and I work in HR. So I like celebrate Pride by doing events like this. And also, of course, going to LA Pride. I love being around my community, my people. I feel most comfortable. So that's how I celebrate Pride. Anjali, would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Anjali. I'm an actor. I direct, write, cast, do production sometimes. A little bit of everything. But primarily a voice actor. I like Keevon said, I think during Pride for me the priority is like recognizing and remembering community. So I think I try to make more of an effort than usual, although I feel like I try to do my best usually to connect with folks that I haven't gotten the chance to before. Uh, in the context of like voiceover, I help run the Queervox LGBTQIA plus VO directory, and I'm pretty involved with the community over with Queervox. A lot of like newer queer voice actors trying to find their footing in the industry. And this is a month where I think we try to especially connect and talk about a lot of issues that we're having in our industry, but also just like getting to know each other and building connections, which is very important this month, every month, but especially now. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Who wants to go next? I'll call on you if you maybe Star since you're unmuted.
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Star Victoria. I am a director and the first assistant director in the business. I hail from Syracuse, New York, but live in Atlanta and travel wherever take me. I mean, I'm loud and proud every day. I'm so much more extra, very extra that my friends are like, girl, you are so extra this month. And I'm like, that's right. June is the extra month for us LGBTQIA people. So how I celebrate that is I love to go to as many Pride functions as possible. I've traveled around and gone to New York Pride several times. I've gone to the Black Pride in Washington, D.C., LA. You got to go to Miami, so on and so forth. So, just hanging out and doing those Pride events and just enjoying us as a group, as a people, as singular, loud and proud folks. And, whatever I can do when I meet other LGBTQIA younger people who are kind of still struggling with their family's acceptance or their friends' acceptance, I always just reach out and listen and try to, give them some great advice. It's not always easy. I was able to come out and be loud and proud. I've had very accepting friends and family since I was 19. So, when I see other people struggling, I'm a mentor, a healer, and a friend in those times as well, especially during the month of June, generally every day, but in the month of June. I find ways to make myself useful to other LGBTQIA folks. So that's what I do in June.
Awesome. Thanks, Star. David, do you want to go next?
I would love to. I'm David Mandel. I'm a writer and director. And for, I guess like the month of June, it's very similar to Star. I am also very extra. Even more so in June, but like all year round, I'm guacamole at Chipotle, extra. But during Pride Month, you know, I love to go to as many events as possible. Like I don't go out every weekend. You know, I went to West Hollywood Pride this last weekend, and it was a really great sense of community where, you know, you'd walk around the festival and I'd run into friends every couple of minutes. And then it was just a really incredible time to see like years and years, Jessie J. But throughout the year, you know, I living in Los Angeles and the industry, a lot of relationships tend to be transactional. So I really try to cultivate a safe space where I've been hosting a lot of gay dinner parties and gay movie nights to introduce people to movies. A lot of, you know, most people wouldn't see Portrait of a Lady on Fire, very great gay movie. And I don't think I've had a dinner party without myself getting in a wig and heels and doing a lip sync to Shoshana Bean's cover of Purple Rain.
Yes, I love that, David. As someone who personally witnessed, it's blown away. So, Jeff, would you mind taking it away from there?
Hi, I'm Jeff Nucera. I don't get invited to David's dinner parties, and that's just fine. It's fine. I'm not bitter. I'm a producer and writer. I mostly work in the unscripted world, although I'm trying to claw my way out. But as far as, you know, Pride goes, I feel like the others, just a little bit, a lot during the year. So in June, I try to commit myself to rolling my eyes extra hard at my straight friends and making sure that I'm paying more attention to like queer content than I normally would throughout the year, even though I love it always. The end.
Awesome. That all sounds good. Thank you guys so much. So let's just dive into the questions now. Would love to hear from all of our panelists on this particular question. How did you find your way into the industry?
I'll jump in. So I found my way into the industry. I was an actress, you know, all through high school. It was a good way to kind of stay away from the house and do the extracurricular activities after school. And drama was my thing. So I was doing that, trying to make it in New York. And then I did a feature film, and it was pretty bad director. And so I just said, well, Jesus, I don't want to put myself in that predicament again. So I'll start directing. And that's kind of what I did. And then I just realized I was better as a director than I was as an actress. And so then my career just kind of progressed from there. And then, you know, working on other people's projects, getting bumped up to help assistant direct. And that's pretty much how I got in. And I was working on anything, whatever I can work on, whether it was LGBTQI themed or horror or drama or period piece, whatever. Somebody said, I need you to help me and take this garbage out or whatever, I would do whatever I could. So that's how I got in the industry.
All right. Oh, perfect. David, you're on it. Cool.
For me, similarly, I love attention. So I really thought I was going to be an actor. So I went to school for that. I went to USC, fight on. And USC, fight on. Yes. And, I haven't left LA since. And after graduating, I realized I wasn't going to wait for someone else to cast me in something. So I wanted to, generate my own content and create my own opportunities. So I started writing a script. And after, I'd never taken a writing class. I'd never, had any training whatsoever in the writing space. So I showed it to a friend of mine who was working in development, and she goes, David, this isn't awful. And I said, okay, that's a good start, I guess. And I worked on that script for a while after that, trying to set it up. And we got pretty close twice, but I'm really glad it never happened because, then I wrote 3 or 4 more screenplays that no one will ever see the light of day. But that's when I started to get, at least decent at it. And then for whatever reason, my best friend in the entire world said, let's do something together. We ended up adapting a book, and set it up at a studio with a big budget, major actors. It ended up falling apart because of COVID. We're restructuring it now, but that was the kind of thing that allowed me entrance into the industry, which helped me sell my first show. And now I have a ton of other things set up that we're just, waiting for a green light. So it was, wanting to be an actor, which there is a show I'm going out with now that I'll star in. So the attention will be coming soon.
I was gonna do a lead-in to be like, I guess I'm the only actor that's like, but I guess not. Come on, David. Yeah, I did not grow up acting or go to school for acting. I feel like I am the stereotypical immigrant story, and I had a very set path in life, and was gonna be a lawyer. And halfway through my undergraduate, which was not that long ago, I kind of accidentally fell into acting, and specifically voice acting. A friend of mine was really into podcasting, and I was like, oh, I can listen to these. And when you start listening to podcasts, you want to start making podcasts. These are all fictional podcasts. And then that kind of found its way into acting in video games. And then I was like, wait, I'm a huge animation nerd. I want to voice an animation. And that's sort of been the goal. And I've gotten the chance to, which has been exciting. So entirely by accident. I really can't explain it, especially because the entirety of my career started during the pandemic, and I'm in Virginia. So all of my connections have been basically through social media, which is crazy because everyone tells me I'm an 80-year-old trapped in a 20-something body, but somehow social media gave me a career. And I got very fortunate along the way, finding a great agent, blah, 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 and getting to work on some really, really cool projects. So I guess my short answer to the question is I have no idea how I got into this industry, but that seems to be the consistent answer when I ask other people the same question. So...
Awesome. Thank you for that, Anjali. Last but not least, Jeff.
Hi, I guess I'm the only non-performer in the group, as it turns out. How did I get into the industry? I moved to LA in 1999 from Philadelphia. I was out of college, and before social media, before all of the tools we have now, I was just literally sending out resumes by the dozens. I probably sent out over 100 resumes and got maybe 2 interviews, didn't get hired. I had no experience, obviously, because I just got here. And it was literally a friend of a friend heard that I was in town and needed someone to come help them. And then I just never let go. I never left. And so, just worked my way up from being a PA with live TV shows, live award shows, and then eventually kind of veering off into the unscripted path that I am on today.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jeff. I feel like definitely after hearing all of your stories today, the audience should take note that there's not a standard way to enter the industry. So I hope you all feel encouraged with that little bit of news there. Next question we have is, what is the biggest risk that you've taken and what was the outcome? I don't know. I'll start calling on you if you don't. Okay.
I mean, I can jump in. I guess the biggest risk I've taken is pursuing a career in entertainment. That's it. Being creative, because there is no set path, because there's no how to crawling your way or working up the ladder. It's throwing spaghetti at the wall, and the outcome was a lot of sad nights alone crying.
Yeah, I agree. Same. I mean, pretty much. No, seriously. If you think about it, I've led a pretty fun and exciting life, but risky wise, it's being part of this business, sacrificing because you miss out on a lot of friendships because you're working late, and relationships are always hard to keep because you got to find the right person. And not even just that, but you got to just mentally and emotionally keep yourself in a really stable place, especially if you're an other, diverse LGBTQ, Black, Asian, whatever have you. You're dealing with those issues on top of it. So, just becoming a part of this industry and trusting in yourself and believing you're going to make it. That's always been like a very huge obstacle to deal with the rejection letters and so on and so forth. But it's all worth it in the end, because regardless, when you create that one thing, it's a great feeling. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is terrifying to just kind of pick up everything and move to LA or New York or wherever you're going, kind of alone, and just trying to sort of navigate what you're doing and why you're doing it, and finding yourself along the way is also like an additional challenge, but you can do it, everybody. Hooray.
On that happy note, let me sour it up. I just think the biggest thing is like there are no guarantees. Like most every other career you work up, there, whether or not you follow the same path as everyone else, there's structure. And I guess freelancers in general understand this, but I think especially in entertainment, considering how competitive it is, there's it's not just that there's no guarantee, there's less than no guarantee. And so you have to emotionally and mentally prepare yourself for that at every single step. And then if you're even semi-successful at something, it blows your mind. So it's kind of like a pessimist world. You're setting yourself up for failure. So when you do well, that was a great surprise.
Awesome. Thanks for that, everyone. What are some of the diversity challenges that you guys have observed as an LGBTQ plus person? And how did you go about tackling that challenge?
Well, I could say that I worked for a company. I'm not gonna say the name of the production company, but it's here in Georgia, and it was from a church, and they made great stuff. Like their stuff was very diverse in terms of the storylines and stuff like that. And so when the director stepped off to go actually create a professional production company, the church was hiring, but I was looked over because I was LGBTQIA. Even though they knew me and they loved me and everything was great, and I worked with them on several projects, and there was always championing me, in people, but then behind closed doors, it was like, oh, well, she's LGBTQIA. I don't know if our church aligns with that, you know what I mean? So I was dealing with that. And it's a time old story with the, church and LGBTQ, but still, if somebody like me who's very open-minded and you think that the world has changed enough to accept, and even with these diversity programs, a lot of them are just for show. So even though somebody's saying, hey, we got this diversity show for bi people of color, whatever, and this one for LGBTQ, a lot of it's just for show for a lot of these production companies. So they're checking off the box and saying, oh, we got it. People think that we're doing this. I was actually a shadowing director through Ryan Murphy's production company, and dealt with a lot of issues there as well, in terms of, being passed over for, the Caucasian white girl type of situation. So it's, and you think that it would be very embracing because it's LGBTQIA owned, but there's still many doors to come up. But then you have people that you meet. Like I met one of the directors of photography. He's LGBTQ. He's got a husband, and him and I became great friends. And he's always championing me. And so it's building that network, which is why a lot of people always choose to work on projects that are either headed or produced by LGBTQ or people of color or diversity and so on, because we're trying to champion one another. But the doors are still closed for the most part. They're opening a little bit. They're letting a few people in, but it's still a struggle regardless every single day. As a Black woman, LGBTQ, IA, it's still a struggle. But we're here, we're queer, we're coming in.
Yes. As a gay man, I mean, I started in the business in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we were still fighting for gay marriage, and we were still fighting, which I think we're maybe about to start fighting for it again. But back then we were in a really weird, like, kind of conservative era, and I remember working on a couple of shows where, like, us would talk openly about how she was against gay marriage and how it wasn't right, and it was really a strange time, especially because she was so progressive in so many other ways, and it just was like that was just the prevailing opinion back then. And nowadays it is a, it's more welcoming for sure, but as a person now who can be who as a person who hires now teams, I try to make sure that I can bring in as many um, different types of people, so that, because the stories just are, especially with unscripted, like you're telling these stories, and the more points of view you can get, the more enriched they are, I think. And so that, I think people are starting to recognize that more and more. These successful shows are successful because they're appealing to people in a much more nuanced way, instead of just sort of basic, broadcasting to everyone, lowest common denominator stuff.
I think, interestingly, I guess with directors, writers, production, it's it's obviously very different from acting, because acting is so front facing. I think we've probably seen the most conversation, especially with folks outside of the industry, about it. And like voiceover specifically in the last few years, I mean, it's been major strides, really, really positive stuff. Whether you think about like just major controversies that have driven that, like Kristen Bell in Central Park, or Central Park, I forget the name of the show, or Jenny Slate in Big Mouth, and things like that. That's really driven things forward. I think now the conversations that I tend to have with other actors, both actors of color and queer actors, tends to be that I think sometimes the distinction between representation and diversity aren't clear, because they're not the same thing. And we like to treat them as the same thing. And the frustration with that is, before it was frustrating because we had like Hank Azaria playing like a stereotypical Indian character on The Simpsons, and no one wanted that. But like now the frustration is, and this existed before, but now it's really been intensified, is just fighting against being put in that box and not being able to escape it. When casting directors tend to put you in their back pockets until you match a character, and then suddenly you're top of mind, as opposed to your peers, who, your cis white actors who maybe have the same level of talent, skill, and experience as you. Sometimes they're more mediocre than you, who get opportunities that you would never see. And that's an ongoing conversation. And I think the solution to it is diversity, behind the scenes. Diversity amongst casting directors. I think that that's the way we push it forward. And when it comes to queer issues specifically, I think there's an obsession with the sound. And it tends to be that, actors that can sound cis, like I do, will always book more, will always get more opportunities, will always be doing better in this industry. So that's like the first obstacle we face, is how do we include people who don't fit that sound, that casting directors immediately dismiss as not being legible for the average American audience. And then beyond that, for characters that are trans, that are non-binary, and their sound, that's a whole other conversation. Because then, do you sound queer enough? Do you sound trans enough? And that, it's a can of worms at every single step. And the solution, again, I think, is having those people be a part of the conversation on the casting level, on the production level, showrunners. Like, the more diversity we see there, the more it trickles down.
And for me, working in film, it's really interesting because at the end of the day, I have to remind myself constantly that, you know, we are still in a business, because a lot of these, you know, major studios or streamers are all under umbrellas of major corporations. And, you know, they feel the repercussions if they don't support diversity and, you know, LGBTQ. You can see Disney after Florida. The problem is they have big talk, but and they always say, every streamer studio says, we want a gay show, we want this. And I had a friend who sold a pilot to NBC, really gay, it was really fun. And throughout the notes process, they watered everything down. So you could barely tell it was about a gay man. And they ended up not going through because it just didn't work. And a lot of these, you know, executives are really risk averse, and by really going there to really explore the queer experience, it's going to make some people uncomfortable, and it does isolate a lot of the audience. So a lot of the executives try to refrain from actually, you know, portraying true representation of what the queer experience is. And there was and what's interesting now too is this idea of, I love your point of, you know, representation, and they're different things. And so I had a film that was set up with some of the biggest producers in town. It was my directorial debut. It was a movie that was written about my breakup, because, you know, if you're going to date an artist, get ready to air out some dirty laundry. And it was one of those things, the producers really wanted a $30 million budget for my first movie. That's insane and would require huge cast names to get it financed. And there was because it's musical, there's about 3 openly gay actors who can sing, who could get probably $5 million for a movie. All of those actors didn't want to do it because it's exactly what they should be doing, and they wanted to do something that we didn't expect. So I was kind of out of options, and I met with a straight singer who is one of the most famous singers in this age range, and he was going to do my movie to play me, but we couldn't go forward because he wasn't gay. And this was a really interesting conversation because of everything that had been happening. And I was having trouble because, you know, as a openly gay writer director, I do want to support gay voices and get, you know, those people in front of the camera. But at the same time, my voice is then not being able to tell these stories because that person who's going to play me was straight. That being said, we would pair him with someone who was a discovery to make someone else of the queer community a more valuable actor to get their other movie made. And it was really important to me that I did cast openly gay actors, but, you know, it's also the decision of whether or not my movie got made, and it didn't because of that. So it's an interesting time that people really want to, you know, champion queer voices and all these things, but no one really wants to take the risk.
I kind of want to really quickly add on to that, and I think this might touch one of the questions we'll get to later, but I was having a conversation recently about something that, like, I think the way that I talk about some of this to other queer actors, other actors of color, is going to be different than the way I would say it to anyone else. I think the goal when we're talking to the general public is, you know, we heavily want representation right now in a way that, like, I could never imagine, like, XYZ character being played by someone who isn't Indian or who isn't whatever. But I was talking to someone recently, and the feeling that we very much had was, you know, unless, you know, that background or identity is super important to the character, the ideal future is we really can play anyone. It's just we aren't there yet because of the history that our industry has. Like, if I don't have an equal chance at booking a white role or booking, like, a cis role or whatever, then at what point, like, how is, you know, there's a playing field that has to be leveled before we could even get to that conversation, is sort of the feeling. But at the same time, I think there are absolutely situations like this where do we suppress existing stories because the market doesn't let us tell it exactly the way that we want to. I think that it's complicated.
It is. And I, as a director, you know, I totally understand, David, where you're coming from, because for me, it's always whoever gets the part. Generally, you want to put the casting call out for the people that is being represented within this character. LGBTQ, somebody, handicapped or whatever. And but you really want to also choose the right actor to bring the character to life. So there is that battle, like you said, if you can't find the right LGBTQ person to represent you, then that's the struggle, because you really want to bring this to life, and you found somebody who could represent you that you feel really good about. But then there's that, that all-seeing eye that says you should be putting this person in who's LGBTQ, not somebody who's cis, to represent you. And then you have to deal with that backlash if you choose to do a cis in this LGBTQ role. How's the world going to take it? How's the, Hollywood going to take it? Are you going to deal with constant negative reviews? And it's interesting to see how it has shifted, because obviously, back in the day, nobody cared about who played who, as long as it was a good actor, you know what I mean? Except for one particular female actress who plays everybody from Asian to everything else, but we won't talk about her. Anyway, so yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, David. It's a catch-22, but like you said, Anjali, I want to make sure I said your name right. We do got to really try to find ways to put us in these positions, to these roles, behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, so that, there's a more of a collective understanding, so that if it did come down to hiring a cisgender, there's more people behind the scenes that are like, okay, we understand, as opposed to being outside and being like, why can't we get in? What's happening? So.
Yeah, no, I think that's all great stuff. And I loved hearing that all of you have reached back for other people that are a part of our community. I think that's so important. One day, again, we can really open the doors ourselves for our own people, which is awesome. What's the best career advice that you've ever received? Did you put it into practice, and what was the outcome?
Mine was actually advice.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go.
No, mine's silly. Go ahead.
Well, mine was actually not given to me, but it's advice I gave to someone as she was struggling to leave the industry. And, this is one of the most emotionally tumultuous career paths you can ever choose. And, the only person that should believe in yourself more than anybody else is yourself. So as she asked me, she said, David, I'm thinking of giving up acting. And she was looking for sympathy, like, oh no, stick with it, you're so good. I said, I don't care. Like, that doesn't affect my life. If you want to go do something else, I will still be your friend, but I won't go to sleep and lose sleep over this. I don't care. But I won't say her name. It doesn't matter. Aaron, you have to understand that everybody, when they pursue this type of industry, has a number. Nobody knows what that number is. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 200, sometimes it's 2,000. And this number represents the amount of failures it takes to get the one piece that will kind of tilt you over the edge to get your career started. And the only thing you have to ask yourself is if you are willing to find out what that number is, no matter what it might be. And if the answer is no, stop now, because it will take a lot longer than expected. And that is something, the number is nothing you're ever going to know, but once you get that amount of failures, there's always going to be one time that it tips it over the edge.
Really quick, Jeff, because it's like directly related to that. I got a piece of advice that basically, it was like, if you can be happy doing anything else, do that. And I feel like that's a fair piece of advice. Again, this industry has no guarantees and it owes you nothing. And if you're willing to push through the emotional turmoil of like the great unknown of it all, great. As depressing as that sounds, but the satisfaction of getting it is incredible. So that's worth fighting for. But also just like the creative fulfillment. Like if you feel that passion and genuinely don't think you can find that in doing anything else, then I mean that's the decision there for you. So that was really a meaningful piece of advice for me as I was at a crossroads. So
before I moved to LA, there was a woman. I had like a really terrible office desk job in New Jersey, which just couldn't be worse. And I remember telling this person that I was thinking about moving to LA to try to make it in the entertainment industry, and she literally said to me, "Just stay here and give up your dreams like the rest of us." And I was like, that is it. I'm out. Gotta go. That was not really I don't think it had the intended the expected result.
Succeed out of spite.
But I was like, it scared the living hell out of me. But the real career advice that I've actually gotten that I feel like helped is always take the meeting. Even if it's a job you're not interested in, even if it's a person you don't think you need to meet or want to meet, always take the meeting. And I've been told that by a good friend who was right. I mean, there have been times where I've taken a meeting and then 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, I've gotten reintroduced to this person, and it's like, oh, I remember you from this thing that didn't work out, but now there's this other thing. But then there's also it also had the opposite effect, where I met someone and had a really decent set of interviews with them, and then they went a little mental, and it was nice to know that for future opportunities that came up with this person. I was like, oh, I know this person's unstable, and I will be seeing something else in my future.
Yeah, to jump off of that, the always take the meeting, I had 2 good pieces of advice given to me. One was always take somebody's contact information or their business card and always contact them back. So you go out and you network at all these events and you get all these people's contact information or business cards or whatever, and then they go onto your desk or onto a shelf or whatever, and nobody ever contacts anybody. And so the good piece of advice was always, as soon as you get back home, start filling out emails with everybody you met and email every single person. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Good to meet you. And so I do that all the time. And now, with Instagram, it's really easy for the most part. If I go out and I meet people, I'm like, follow me on Instagram. So there you end up building your followers, as well as it's very easy to remember who you saw because you have the visual now of them. And I just ping them a nice message, private message, nice to meet you. And, from there, it connects. I just went to Colorado for a film festival, met somebody, happened to be in the airport going home. That same person was there. We had some lunch, and now I'm going to New York for Tribeca. They're going to be there, and we're going to the Soho House. You know what I mean? So it always works out. And so that was one piece of good advice. Always get people's contact information when you're networking, and always contact them back. And the other one was never tell yourself no. And so I didn't understand that at first when this person told me, and they were like, look, if you tell yourself no, then you're never going to go to the next level. So never tell yourself no. Allow the no to come from somebody else, because it could actually be a yes. And so there's like this big stigmatism, and a lot of people, especially the people on, the upper echelon of Hollywood, they're like, oh, it's not good to contact people or just email people or just call people or whatever have you. But I've ignored all that because I was never going to tell myself no. And so I would just contact people. I'd find people's email. The way that I got my agent for APA, I went and Googled who represents first assistant directors, and APA had a below the line. And I looked and saw this guy's name. He had an Italian last name. I'm half Italian. He's from New York. And I was like, all right. So I pinged him an email. He emailed me right back and said, I have a job for you with Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown that's filming in Atlanta. And I got the job. And now he's my representation. I got John Singleton to be my mentor by just going on IMDb, finding his contact information. He actually had a private Yahoo email, which I didn't think would work. But I was like, don't tell yourself no, Star. Let them tell you no. So I emailed him. No response. I emailed it back. I was like, hey, I'm just checking in. And his manager contacted me, and she was like, what do you want? And I was like, I wanted to see if John will represent me. I'm a grad student at USC. I'm working on my thesis, if he'd mentor me. And a day later, he said, sure. His email literally was, sure, here's my phone number. Call me. So, you know what I mean? So that's why that's a big piece of advice. Just never tell yourself no, because you never know. You might get the door slammed in your face, but they might open the door and say, come on in, have some lunch. So always, give yourself the opportunity to get that yes by never telling yourself no, and reach out to people.
I think those two are incredibly connected because I was in an entertainment entrepreneurship class at USC, and every week we had a different panelist or a couple of panelists, and every week I got their email, I contacted them. I think I got 8 responses out of like 24 and only 4 actual like in-person meetings. But each one of those people had said, you were the only person in the class to contact me at a class that was about creating and getting your first film made as an entertainment entrepreneur. So you assume that everybody in the class had that sense of initiative. So you really can be the one in the million if you're the only person who responds. So I think that's incredible advice.
Yeah, I think that's all great career advice. I hope our audience members are taking notes because I definitely sure was. So I think I do want to open it up to audience questions as well. So audience, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. But before that, I think after hearing from all of you today, I can tell that you all love what you do. Would love to know any techniques that you've used to stay encouraged on the road to becoming who you are today.
Well, I mean, to stay encouraged, to stay inspired, constantly, going back to the filmmakers and the films that I love, or the stories or the books that I love, rereading certain books that have inspired me to want to be a storyteller. And then always, just because it is such a hard industry, emotionally, mentally, for every 100 patients, you get 95 rejections. You have to really be able to mentally and emotionally deal with that. So, it's hanging out with friends. It's keeping that balance between friends and family as much as you can, as well as drinking a lot of alcohol. No, I'm just kidding. But, mimosas do work during lunch. That always works. I love me a good mimosa and some brunch. I'm that weekend person. Who's going to brunch with me?
I am so thirsty. Yeah.
Okay. But definitely, you just, massages, actually having, a therapist, and having that you in this industry. I don't care who you are, what you do in this industry, you have to have a therapist in this business. You absolutely have to have one. So stuff like that. And, going on hikes and just finding the things that make me happy in my solitude to keep me grounded.
So I think we're getting some questions in here. I'm not sure if you guys can see them. Technology hates me. So if you can see the question, stop me. But the question that we have from Hari is, what's one thing you wish you knew when starting out your career?
This is, for me, it was similar to the last question. I watched the movie Soul, and it fucked me up. It screwed me up. It was one of those things. My first press release where my face was in Variety came out when I, sold my first show, and it was this really big, exciting time. And a month later, I watched Soul. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's been a long time. It's spoiler alert. He gets everything he's ever wanted because his entire life is based on his ability to succeed in his career. And he plays on stage with Dorothea Williams. Everything in his life is coming true. And he gets off stage and she looks at him and said, "Hey, Teach, how you feeling?" He goes, "I thought it would feel different." And she looks at him and says, "There's 2 fish. One fish says to the other fish, 'Hey, I'm looking for the ocean.'" And he says, "You're in it." He goes, "No, this is water. I'm looking for the ocean." And I wish I didn't turn 28 and finally thought that my life was starting, because I was always doing the same exact thing. Nothing had changed about my writing. I wasn't a better writer because I sold something. Someone just acknowledged that I was finally, they said whatever. I wish I was able to start living way before, because you will never get the level of success when you always want more. And it really curbed my sense of happiness for about a decade.
What was the question
The other
again?
thing, sorry. What do you wish you knew when you were starting out? For me, it is the fact that no one knows what they're doing. Literally, no one knows what they're doing. We're all just figuring it out, myself included. Anyone who is in charge is figuring it out. Every project is different. Every show is different. You can bring your knowledge, your expertise, your experience to it. But my favorite phrase while we're in production and in post-production is every show is everyone's first show. No one knows what they're doing. We're all just figuring it out. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to own up to the mistakes that you do make, because that's how we learn. No one comes in just knowing everything. And in this industry specifically, it's impossible to know everything, because every show is everyone's first show, and also everyone's worst show sometimes.
Yeah, I agree on that. You know, you come in this business and you're really high strung, nervous, because you think that you have to be 100%, but, you know, just like Jeff said, everybody is still trying to figure it out. You know, they could be, you know, the upper echelon of Hollywood, and they're still trying to figure it out depending on what project they're working on. So, you know, coming into it, and I wish I would have understood that earlier. I could have saved myself a lot of stress from feeling like I was, you know, not, you know, up to the expectations of what I thought I needed to be. And, you know, and when everybody's telling me, no, you're doing fine, relax. It was, you know, believing that, because when they say you're doing fine, you really are doing fine. Even if you think you're not, and you think you're imploding, you're not. So you have to, you know, so having that information up front would have saved me a lot of stress that everybody is still trying to figure it out on every single new project they work on.
I was gonna say, I think I'm newer to my career than the other panelists, but so this is something I would say to myself starting, but honestly something I would say to myself right now, because I don't know how much I've internalized it. But it's partially what David was saying in terms of like recognizing your successes for the time that you've been doing this, and then also accepting that there's no set timeline for you or for anyone. And I think that was really hard for me, because I would see people who, you know, maybe have been acting since they were kids or something like that. Like, I would see their timelines and feel so skewed about it compared to my own, even though I've been incredibly fortunate in opportunities I've gotten. And that's such an easy way to minimize your successes, because it doesn't matter if you get this one big thing, if it isn't like big in the grand scheme of things, of like where your timeline should be, you never take it as a success, and you don't let yourself enjoy it. And that's something, you know, I'm still working on. So yeah, something I wish I knew, something I wish I could process right now.
All right, thanks everyone. Another question we have here is, what's the what's the best thing that has happened to you this year, and who did you share it with? I'll go ahead and drop this in the chat for you guys as well. Here we go.
The best thing that's happened to me this year, well, I mean, this year is getting started, so best thing has happened to me yet. But the best thing that's happened to me last year, I won a DGA jury award for my thesis film. So that was always was a very exciting thing. And I've been getting a lot of interviews. I interviewed to direct an episode of The Good Doctor. And I was a Shondaland finalist, as well as the Disney General Entertainment finalist for directing TV. So, you know, those moments have been exciting and great. And they've definitely, you know, helped me get over the 50 rejection letters that I received previously and still continue to receive, because I put myself up for every opportunity that I absolutely can. Which is another piece of advice to everybody. Put yourself up for every single opportunity that you absolutely could put yourself up for, because you never know. You know, with the DGE one, I didn't, you know, I put myself up to it the year before, and when I put the application in, I didn't expect to get the email that says, hey, you look like a good opportunity to direct for The Good Doctor. And I was like, what? So that was exciting. This year, I'm still waiting. There's still some more exciting things that are going to be happening. So catch me in December and I'll let you know what was the best thing that's happened to me this year.
I'll be sure to ping you for that update for sure.
For me, there's been a few really exciting career pieces that will be, you know, in a couple of months, I'll be able to talk about it. But I think even more important than that, the last couple of months, it was my ability to master detachment. And I've found this weirdly peaceful sense of self that I won't let anybody, either personal or professional, determine my own power, because I'm the only one who will allow myself to do that. And, you know, this sense of detaching my worth from anything other than what I offer the world as a person and not a creator has really allowed me to become centered. And because of that, I wrote the best script I ever could last week. So it has led me to open myself up to a lot of opportunities to feel centered and happy.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for sharing. I think we have time for one last question. What is a piece of advice you tell your past self?
Sleep. Sleep, seriously. My piece of advice is to literally enjoy sleeping, enjoy relaxing, which is something I think I took for granted in this business. I was running. I mean, I still hit the pavement usually, you know, when you work in the industry, especially as a director or a first assistant director, you're working 14, 15 hours a day for 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, depending on if you're doing these big features at a time. And you're just exhausted because you're running yourself, you know, all over during the week. And then on the weekends, you're trying to keep up with friends and family and you know, enjoy your little me time. So you're just consistently going. And I've had to get to a point where I had to tell myself, even though I am trying to maintain those friendships, those relationships, there's just times when on the weekend, I just have to shut it all down and just veg out, watch some Netflix and chill and fall asleep and wake up and watch some Netflix and chill and fall asleep and wake up and do that through a weekend and just have that. And I wish I would have told myself that, you know, gave that advice to me earlier or had that advice for myself earlier, you know, because it really wears on you physically, mentally, your health, you know what I mean? And so that's why they say a lot of first ADs and a lot of people who work in the production aspect, you know, they have shorter lifespans for the most part is what they say. And I think, but you know, kale is actually helping us out. We're living longer with kale. I'm just kidding.
I think the other piece of advice I would give myself is say no to a project.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I have been very guilty of just saying yes to whatever comes along because I'm freelance and it's scary and I have, you know, car payments to make or whatever it is. But not every show is for every person, and it's not always going to be a good fit. And finding that balance for you is, you know, it's a deeply personal choice. And even when you start a project, you can leave. Like if it's abusive, if it's toxic, if there's a real problem, you can say, you know what, I'm a human being and I gotta go and be a human being somewhere else because you guys are all monsters. And it's just, you know, just saying, learning your boundaries and sticking with them is a really important lesson to learn because people will take advantage.
Let me just piggyback on that. I literally just left a project at the end of last month because I was assistant director on a project, feature film with some really, you know, decent name stars. And it's a network television movie. But the director was just very just disrespectful and I felt abused. I didn't feel like I was respected, that my talent and my ability wasn't being honored or respected. And I sent producers an email and I said, you have to find a first AD replacement. You know what I mean? And it does get tough to make those choices, especially when you realize, well, if I didn't work for the last month, or if I did work for the last month, but I was working on a smaller project, you know, so when you're in this business, you have to for one, here's a great piece of advice. Save your money as much as possible. I know that sometimes when people get in this business, initially they start making all this good money and they're like, oh, let's party and stuff. You know what I mean? If you save your money, then you have the opportunity to say no and to walk off and say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be abused or treated like this, because you're okay with the fact that you have a nice nest egg to do that. Because when you do get these opportunities and there's like, this is a big piece of money I'm walking away from, you have to be comfortable and confident to say, I'm more important than the green cast that I'm going to be paid and the disrespect. And so I just walked off something myself. So absolutely, that's a piece of great advice. Say no and walk off something if you don't feel respected.
This is unrelated, but I would say, although I will say, like, Lucy Liu, F you money anyway. But I would say find your people, because in this industry, your social circle and your work circle cannot just overlap, they can be one circle. And so that's not ideal for ever having a hope of a work-life balance. And so I think that being able to like draw boundaries is really important, and I think something we are all historically bad at. So I think that is something I would tell my past self to focus on and learn to be good at. Working on it still. Many things to work on. Anyway.
I think for me, as looking at myself earlier as an artist, when writers come to me and they're like, I really want to break into the industry, what do you recommend? My piece of advice in terms of the craft itself is, if there is anybody else in the world who can write that same script, you should let them write it. And I'm not saying, it has to be the one story. It's not about what story you're telling. It's the way you're telling it and the way you see your way inside of it. Because, I used to write scripts for what the audience might want. And that meant I had nothing to say. I just wanted to make money because I wanted to sell a script that could get made. Until I finally said, I'm not considering what the audience wants. I'm writing what I need to get on the page to have a place to put my pain. That's when people started paying attention to my writing. I wrote 5 scripts no one will ever read because I thought that's what people might want. And it kind of plays into this idea that I was so focused on pushing life away and sitting down and writing and churning as many scripts as I could out that could get made. I forgot to live. So I really didn't have anything to say. So there is a balance you need to maintain, where Sarah comes back to you. It's, you can't let this need to succeed stop you from still being a person.
Again, you guys gave me chills. I can't believe we're at the end of our conversation. I think time flies by when you're having fun. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Virtual applause for donating your time here with us. Before we go,
donating. Wait a minute.
I'll be sending my invoice.
Okay. I think some of you I'll be buying you some drinks as thank yous. But yeah, before we go, just wanted to check in with our panelists and see if there's anywhere that we can keep up with you, maybe follow you, maybe starting with Anjali.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I'm terrible at social media, but I'm on Twitter. You can follow me at Here Lies Anjali. I don't know where that came from, but literally, like the gravestone, Here Lies Anjali. Yeah, that's pretty much the only place I'm active, but I am active on there, so.
So no TikToks for Anjali?
No, I just watch them and
Me too.
get Stranger Things songs stuck in my head.
And... Star, what about you?
I'm only on Instagram. Well, I mean, I have a Facebook, but that's, personal friends. So Instagram, you can follow me on. It's Star Victoria Director. That's it. One word, Star Victoria Director.
Love that. David?
I really only have Instagram. It's at David Mandel. It's spelled that way. I didn't have a TikTok because, I would have become totally TikTok famous, and that's not what I wanted to be known for. So I tried to stay away.
And Jeff?
I am at the UH Jeff on Instagram. where you can see all of my future projects. And by future projects, I mean pictures of my cat. Enjoy.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, our amazing panelists. Woo! Happy Pride, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and have a great Pride Month. Bye.
Thank you. Nice to meet
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
David, I
Thank
want to
you all.
invite to the brunch.
Yes, same.
Yes, we are very thirsty.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've
Don't
heard.
tempt me with a good time. Let's go.
All right. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. Bye.